Hello, you're listening to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, and I'm so excited to have you join us on the conversation today. All we're doing is exploring the many layers of our world and discovering the diversity of voices and stories that exist within it. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and that it adds new and colorful layers to your life. Welcome to the Layers podcast. I'm your host, Tayo, as always, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Today, in our guest seat, we have Vanessa Bobai, who is a digital sales and marketing specialist at Accenture. She's a former committed blogger, a food enthusiast, an all-round fun girl who never uploads the plethora of content that she has for you on TikTok, on social media, but we'll get into that later. Vanessa was born in Lagos, Nigeria, though she's of Southern Kaduna heritage, and she's here to talk to us today about this often overlooked ethnic group. So welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you. I can't believe that's
your intro.
Biography or introduction. Yeah, it makes me sound very, important and educated. I mean, I am educated, don't get it twisted, but yeah.
I actually think that intro kind of dumbs down everything that you do. I'm always going to hype you. Outside of the podcast, Vanessa and I are actually good friends, and she is super smart. I can't think of a fact that you'd be like, do you know this? And she'd be like, no, I don't know. I could be like, you know what? I wonder what the average temperature in Greenland is. And she'd be like, oh, I think it's this because according to this statistic, according to this, it's like, okay, thank you so much.
Wow. Okay. I need to play this for my mom and dad to listen to so that they know that they didn't waste their money on school fees.
Money did not waste. Their money definitely did not waste. So you were born in Lagos, Nigeria?
Yes, I was. Lagos and I have and I know Tayo is going to laugh at this, we have a love-hate relationship right now. But I honestly wouldn't say that I still live in Lagos because my family is now primarily based out of Abuja. But I have such strong ties with Lagos that I think that every time I go to Nigeria, I do make a trip to Lagos because I still have cousins and family members and friends that live in Lagos. And Lagos still holds a special place in my heart. That's the city that made me. I grew up there, So yeah, Lagos is home, but I don't live in Lagos.
So you live in Abuja now?
When I'm in Nigeria, yes, I do. I'm an Abuja babe right now.
Here we go. Abuja babes like Vanessa and one of our other friends, they spend their time slandering the Lagos that they claim is their second home. Lagos has too much traffic. Lagos is too crowded. Lagos is okay. We've heard you live in Abuja is more peaceful, more tame. We've heard.
But two things can be true at the same time. Lagos does have traffic. Lagos is crowded, but Lagos is also fun. I think that I praise Lagos when Lagos deserves praise, and I criticize it when it deserves criticism. And I would think that I do the same for Abuja, even though there's really nothing to criticize about Abuja, but that's a different story.
You know what? This is the perfect time to segue before I roll my eyes to the back of my head. So both your parents are from Southern Kaduna, correct?
Yes, both my parents are from Southern Kaduna.
Okay, before we get into everything that you can tell us about Southern Kaduna, being born in Lagos, living in Canada, and then living in Abuja, I feel like you're one of the few lucky people that actually has been to where your parents are from and knows quite a lot of that culture, like still identifies as that. Because my dad is from Ondo, and that would never feature in me describing what my identity was as a Nigerian. I would be like, I'm a thoroughbred Lagosian.
I am definitely lucky to be among the people that have experienced the cosmopolitan and urban life of Lagos, but still like very in touch with where they are actually from, or quote unquote where their parents are from. And I have to give props to my parents for keeping those links connected, and my grandparents. So my mom's parents, both my grandparents actually from my paternal and maternal side have lived in Kaduna their entire life.
Okay.
I don't
Where
think
in Kaduna?
So my dad's parents lived in Zaria. They've lived in my village, ultimately retired in my village. And I think most of my childhood, my recollection of them was in my village, in Samaru, Kataf. in Kaduna State. So every time that I visited my dad's parents, I had to go to the village to see my dad's parents. My mom's parents, on the other side, have lived in Kaduna City. They've lived in Zaria. They've lived in Kafanchan. They lived in Kagoro. These are all cities
Wow.
or towns in southern Kaduna. And every time that I had to visit those grandparents, I had to go to Kaduna City. So I think the fact that those two people lived in those different places and I was fortunate to have them alive for most of my childhood
Mm.
made sure that I was connected with what was actually going on. And on my mom's side, my grandfather happens to be an educator by trade. He's very passionate about his Southern Kaduna like origins, his history, and just visiting him as a kid, he would tell us things. My grandfather is like a chief, he's like a chief. His own father was like a district head when he was alive. So I come from a line of people that are, would I say, seen as elders or revered people in the Southern Kaduna world that it's kind of hard to completely detach myself from that reality or from that history.
I would say in some ways as well, custodians of culture. That's what it sounds like, that they're custodians of culture while simultaneously being educators and going about the actual careers of their life. Do you think that that's quite intentional for them?
Yeah, I think that it is, particularly with my mother's father. I think that, not that I think, I know that it's intentional. He's retired now, so he no longer works. He's been retired for a while because my grandfather had his kids when he was really young. So, but what he does now for work is sit on different like committees and councils for ATIAP, which is the language, ATIAP Education
ATIAP.
Literary Committee, ATIAP this, ATIAP that. Like he dedicates most of his time to ATIAP things. And I truly believe that my grandfather loves where he's from because this man will go to the village at every given opportunity. Like he loves being in his village. He really, really does. Like that is his home. He enjoys being there thoroughly. So
I love that. I think for an audience that's listening and may not understand the importance of this conversation. So Nigeria has a population allegedly of 200 million plus. I say allegedly because, we really don't know, the actual number.
Don't.
So allegedly 200 plus is the most populous country in Africa, if that's still the case the last time I checked. And there are three, what is considered three major ethnic groups: Yoruba, Hausa, and Igbo. And I think Hausa people make up 25%, and Yoruba people make up 21%, and Igbo people make up about 18%. And then there are minority ethnic groups such as Ijo, Tiv, etc, etc. Sorry, I'm not mentioning you guys. You Ibibio, Edo guys, there's no beef.
Everybody is loved.
Everybody join. Everybody is love.
Ishekiri.
Shakiri is love, but there's a lot of what one of our friends would call main tribe kind of superiority complex, where minority tribes are not necessarily given the same platforms or put in positions where they are key stakeholders or key positions of power. So we're having this conversation just to bring to light more understanding and more of an open door for better knowledge of minority tribes. And I think that that's probably the best way to put it. So you said your grandfather loves to spend time in his village. There might be people listening being like, well, why wouldn't he? I mean, I get it in the context of being Nigerian, but our audience might not be.
So why wouldn't he? I think there's something about being able to go back to where you know that your ancestors have lived. There's something about being able to go back to land that you're able to lay claim to. You can trace the people that came before you. There's something about just
land.
being amongst it's your father's land. There's something about being amongst your people that are like you, speak the same language as you, share similar values as you do. And I think those are the things that draw my grandfather is in his 70s now. So, I mean, I guess he's getting older and he's getting to that point where all those external things that he was chasing as a younger man are no longer important for him. But what's really important is just being home and being closer to the things that really matter. And he does a lot of the work that he does now requires for him to be home a lot because they're actually doing like proper research on on Atiap literacy and how to preserve the culture. And the only way that you can do that is actually by being in the village. You can't be in Lagos or in Kaduna and be, preserving the culture. You have to live with the culture to be able to, document it properly.
So what's the language Etiab?
In the dialect of the language, it is called Atiap. It's spelled Atyap. Some people spell it Tyap. So it depends. Atiap. That's how it's spelled in the language. But because we're so close to the Hausa people and we do a lot of business with the Hausa people, in the Hausa, it is called Kataf. And Kataf is spelled Kataf, which I think might be what is more popular because of trade and stuff. I think people are, if you know your minority tribes, you might be more conversant with the word Kataf as opposed to the word Atiap or Tiap. But that's what it is. The language is called Kataf or Atiap.
And that's specific to Southern Kaduna.
Yeah, I do not know any other place in Nigeria that speaks that language. We're found in the southern region of Kaduna State. So yeah.
What is the population of Southern Kaduna? Do you know roughly? Because there's
I'll be lying if I said that.
Oh, something you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, and that I'll tell you why I don't know. Very interestingly, why I don't know. I think what I like to call as the genocide, I think the number was put at roughly 500k people pre that. But in recent times, there's been so much killings going on in Southern Kaduna that I don't know how many people have been killed and how many people are still there. So I honestly can't give an exact number of what the population of Southern Kaduna people are anymore. Who are just everywhere, and then they've killed those that are like in a said place. So I don't know.
I want to come back to actually what's happening in Southern Kaduna right now. In fact, I'm actually going to write that down, and the genocide. So we'll speak about that. What separates North and South?
So major thing is tribe and religion. So predominantly those of us on the South, we do have a few Muslims, but if you trace back our history and all of that, we started off as Christians. Those on the northern side are Muslims. Also, those on the northern side are Hausa people. Okay. So that's the real Hausa people. We on the South, a bunch of minority tribes, and it's not just Atiap. There's Atiap, there's Baju, there's Birom, anyways, there's Atiap, there's Baju, there's Adarak, there's Nok, there's Ikulu. There are a bunch of minority tribes that come from Southern Kaduna. So I think those are the two main differences for the north and the south of Kaduna.
Okay, so I want to start with understanding the culture first. So there's Kaduna and there's Southern Kaduna and Northern Kaduna, and you've explained to us kind of the cultural differences, religious, tribal, ethnic. I don't like the word tribal, but outside of the context of a Nigerian conversation. But tribal differences between the two. Is there something that is shared, like in Kaduna State, this is what we do, and I can recognize this in a way that sometimes I can meet someone and be like, oh, that person is Nigerian. And I just know they're Nigerian. And sometimes I can kind of tell very strangely if they're from Lagos or they grew up in Abuja. Sometimes I can tell. Are there kind of giveaways that this person is from Kaduna, but I can't tell if they're from Southern Kaduna or Northern Kaduna?
Honestly, I don't think that I know of anything like that. Apart from the fact that maybe we're all agricultural people, like farmers and bearers of cattle or whatever, like in terms of profession. Or not say profession, but like historical stuff that we did. I can't pinpoint and be like, oh, this is the one thing that all Kaduna people share, or no, I don't think that there is one.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I find that very interesting. So tell us about Southern Kaduna culture and food, because there's kind of this, it's kind of like in recent years, Nigeria has been of interest on the world stage in terms of media, film, music, culture, whatever the case may be. And a lot of the times when you meet someone, they're like, oh, you're Nigerian, like jollof rice. And it's like, there are these kind of staples of being Nigerian. But I think that there will be quite a few people that, even Nigerian people, that may not know staple foods in Kaduna and what the culture is actually like and the expressions of that culture. Sorry, that's quite broad. I do realize we can throw it out as we go.
So maybe since we kind of like stopped on food, maybe we can go from food and then trace it back.
Okay.
When it comes to food, I honestly don't. None of the popular Nigerian foods are from Southern Kaduna, obviously, but we do have a unique take on food. So, like I said before, we're predominantly like farmers, agricultural people. So there's a lot of grains. Our foods contain a lot of grains. So as we call it in Nigeria, swallow or tuwo in Hausa. Tuwo is the generic name I would use for like any form of swallow. So eba, all those things, pounded yam, all of that. The North we'll call it tuwo, but it would be tuwo of whatever it's made up from. So we have swallow that's made from corn. We have swallow that's made from millet. There's swallow that's made from rice. There's swallow that's made from what we call
rice.
Yeah, it's called tuwon shinkafa. Literally, it's swallow, and you can see the grains of the rice in the swallow, but there's a way that they turn it and it comes out in a ball shape. So we make swallow from rice. It's a special type of rice, not any kind of rice, by the way. You can't use any kind of rice, it's a special type of rice. We make swallow from corn, we make swallow from millet, we make swallow from acha. I think acha in English is called fonio seeds. So we make swallow from that. Yeah, we make swallow from guinea corn. So basically, I think most of our grains, so most of our grains, to preserve them longer, we grind them up, dry them up, and then keep them and then make swallow with that. So we're very heavy on the swallow. Go with the swallow, then we make a lot of soups. I think one of the most popular soups in Kaduna and in Southern Kaduna is miyan taushe. It's basically pumpkin leaf soup. It's made from pumpkin leaves.
Like actual pumpkin, like Halloween pumpkin seeds.
Maybe not Halloween pumpkins, but there's a leaf called pumpkin leaves in the north. And
I don't think actual Halloween pumpkins even have leaves. Like they don't.
Exactly. That's what I'm like, maybe not, because I've never.
That was literally what came to me. I was like, pumpkin.
Yeah, please do not go and look for Halloween pumpkins and try to. No, it's not gonna work. But yeah, pumpkin leaves, and we call that miyan taushe. Miyan taushe goes with any of the swallows, mostly the rice swallow, which you call tuwon shinkafa. We have miyan kuka. Miyan kuka is made from baobab leaves. Yeah, baobab is a tree that grows a lot in the north. So we use the leaves to make a soup. We grind it up with some dried okra and you cook it together.
I want to taste all these things.
That. We also eat okra. I will have to find a way to get them to you in Lagos or in London. That's going to be hard. This is why you have to come to Abuja. Speaking of then we do okra, but we make okra slightly differently. We make it with dried okra.
Okay.
So because again we farm all these things and we're trying to increase the shelf life, we dry the okra and we make it with okra. Another thing that's popular is masa. I think masa is a bit mainstream now, but masa is rice cake. I wish I had some in my freezer to show you guys what it looked like. But masa is rice cakes. It's rice. It's blended together and cooked in these really little, I'll call them like molds, like circle molds.
That people can Google them as well.
Then we have, yes, you can Google them.
Idea.
We also have acha. Yes, acha is, it's made either from pruno seeds or it's like a maize pudding. It's the seeds, water, leaves, and then they put in like biscuit bones from the cattle. The cartilage, basically. They use the cartilage and the bone marrows to cook and all of that with a little bit of pepper. It's not my favorite thing, but my dad loves that. At some point growing up, my dad used to eat that every Saturday. So he really, really loves that. So yeah, I think that's it. There's me and yakwa. Yakwa is like our version of like what eforiro would look like for you guys in the Southwest. And of course, there's fura, the nono, which I think is a bit mainstream too, or fura and yogurt, whichever case may be. Nono is just cow's milk, and fura is made from what's it called, millet or sorghum. Again, like I said, our meals are very grain based because that's what we grow. So
Yeah.
just a little intro into what we eat and stuff like that. But I
It
mean,
all
they also
seems
make
very
jollof rice, they make
sustainable.
spaghetti. Yes, 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 yes.
It all
Very
seems very
sustainable.
sustainable. Yeah. Go ahead. Go
Heavy
ahead.
reliance on what we grow. So yeah, it's a heavy reliance on what we grow. They predominantly eat what they grow, and that's been their thing for a really long time.
Okay, so it's so interesting because even when you're talking about the cartilage of the bone, everything is used. Every single
Yeah.
thing is used: bone, meat, skin. Would you? So one of the things I was asking, one of the things I was almost trying to hint at with the Southern Kaduna Kaduna culture in general, is in Lagos things are very fast paced. Like I always say, because I was born and raised in Lagos, chaos is the norm for me. Like living in London, living in Lagos, going to places like New York, like the chaos feels normal to me. Things outside, I appreciate so much when there's a pace of life that seems different. Do you think that a farming culture or just being heavy on agriculture they have a much slower pace of life in Southern Kaduna? And how does that impact communities? I want to ask about the food, but I don't want to overload the question. Go ahead.
I don't know that it's particularly because they're a farming community, that's why they're slow paced. I really would love to dig into that history, and I think it's part of what I should do in my research. But in general, Southern Kaduna people are slow paced people. They are they take life very easily. They don't do well with chaos or the fast pace that Lagos is. They don't do well with that. We're very content. There's no excessive hunger to do too much. Once people can put food on their table, pay their bills and all of that, they're at a good place. They're okay. Which can be good and can be annoying sometimes, but that's generally what the culture in general is like. The culture is not flamboyant in any way, shape, or form. You see, somebody can die today in Kaduna, from Southern Kaduna, and by next tomorrow, they buried you. There's no fluff and pageantry to it. They don't do things big. Everything is just okay, cute, keep it simple. Let's pack it up and move on to the next. That's just how the culture is. But I don't think it's because they are farmers. I don't know. I honestly,
the reason why I say that is because I find that people outside of the city. Sorry, I think our network is even lagging. But the reason why I said that is because I think that people that live outside of the city have noticed, especially in like more rural areas, and they're farmers and everything is quite natural. It's almost as though they're moving with the pace of nature and everything is just going at a very normal human pace. Whereas in the concrete jungle that is in Lagos, everybody is just like, everything is quick. Like I find myself even being like, oh yeah, hurry up now. Like, whereas not everyone is living that kind of agro life.
Definitely. That might definitely be true for people that live in rural communities. They just follow the pace of what nature gives to them, right? And there's not that much distraction going on there. There's no traffic, so you're not rushing to get somewhere.
Lagos people are shaking right now because they can relate.
Yeah, the air is clean. And because the air is clean and there's no traffic and you're not thinking about anything, your thought process is better. Like your brain, and I feel the same way when I go home. It's like when I wake up in the morning in the village, like everything is pin drop silent. All I can hear is like animals making noise and the wind, brushing through leaves and, all of that. It's just silent. And there's a certain clarity of mind that comes with that. So maybe that's why people that live in rural places are like, I beg, people are stressing yourself so much. Life is not that hard.
Life is not that deep. Just come home, chow your food, tap your wine. Well, if you drink, tap your wine and just
they drink a lot in Southern Kaduna. They drink a lot. Yeah, they make this I call it native beer. The name just escaped my mind right now. Burkutsu, that's what it's called. I believe it's made from Guinea corn. They soak burkutsu, yeah. They soak burkutsu and allow it to ferment a bit. And yeah, they drink that. Yeah.
I feel like there's a common thread for me here in the sense of like every every herb, fruit, vegetable is used for something. It's quite incredible. Meanwhile, I'm drinking Pinot Grigio from Italy when I could be drinking Brucutu. Did I pronounce it
Brukutu is not
correctly?
the safest thing to drink, but it exists if you want to try it.
Why is it not the safest thing to drink? I mean, what's even the alcohol percentage if one could measure it?
I think so. I think those are the issues. Not extensive research has been done into Brukutu, so we don't know what the alcohol content is. We don't know, and I believe that there's been more and more it being linked to like kidney, liver issues.
So very high.
All of those stuff. But as with anything that has alcohol, right? Too much of it is never good. So I guess the problem is people are taking too much of it. But there's not been extensive R&D done into Buku to get it to the point where it's So it's locally made, like it's just fermented guinea corn. That's it.
So one of the ways in Nigeria, or one of the ways that people get to know about, I would say, the major ethnic groups, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, I would say that one of the popular ways in media, at least, is through weddings and unions. With Southern Kaduna not having that fanfare of like, big wedding, this, that. What are unions like in Southern Kaduna? Do they follow the same? Everything is pretty relaxed and pretty chill.
I've been to maybe 5 Southern Kaduna weddings, like Southern Kaduna weddings where it's like the bride and groom are Southern Kaduna. And this is typically the flow of things. I'll speak on maybe like when my mom's siblings got married, because those were the ones where I really had like front row seats to what was really going on. So they do the introduction, as with almost every tribe in Nigeria. Introduction is done. And then a day before the wedding, the church wedding, they do a send forth for the bride. So basically, her parents organize a send forth and they go pray for her and basically just give their blessings to release her to her husband the next day. All this to say, I've never seen like a proper traditional wedding. Where how with Yoruba people the alaga will come, the alaga of both families actually would come, and there's all the coming, go out. That I've never seen a proper traditional wedding in that sense of things. I think like my family members that have married like to other tribes, that have married like Yoruba people, Benin people, and all of that. I've seen traditional weddings being done, but it typically mirrors the tribe that they are marrying into's customs and not ours. So I don't know what a traditional wedding should look like. I don't think my parents had a traditional wedding. There are no pictures of that.
Wow.
A send forth, yes, my mom had a send forth, but there's no pictures of a traditional wedding in any shape or form. Like none of that. White wedding, yes, but there's no traditional wedding, which leads me to believe that traditional weddings are not really big, and that's because when Southern Kaduna people, the Atia people, took on Christianity as a religion, it kind of began to replace their culture and traditions. So some things are missing in the gap, and I think they just prefer to do a church wedding, let me put it that way, as opposed to doing anything traditional. So I know that even in our conversations, we joke and I say, oh, there's not that much culture or tradition for Southern Kaduna. I say that like passing in our like other conversations. And it's because a lot of it has been covered up by Christianity or by being Christians. So you would have to actually go and dig to find stuff.
No, I was going to say that it makes me wonder if traditional weddings pre-missionaries were very heavily spiritual, because to me that would make sense as to why there is that kind of eroding, because Yoruba people took Christianity as well. I mean, not all, of course, but Yoruba people took Christianity as well, but they're still able to have that kind of not excessive display of culture through when they're getting married. So now it makes me wonder if it was maybe heavily spiritual, because that's the only thing I can think about, because most other ethnic groups have been able to preserve those sorts of traditions. Food for
Yeah.
thought.
I've had that question on my mind for a long time, and it's part of things that I am going to explore, and I would love to explore when I begin to do my research like project or whatever I'm working on about Southern Kaduna. I want to basically fill the loopholes and understand why certain things no longer exist in the way
Mm,
that they exist in other tribes in Nigeria. And so far, from the preliminary research that I've done and conversations that I've had, the reoccurring theme has been that Christianity has now covered
mm,
some of those things. Recently a family member died. When I was home, I was asking my mom, I was like, I was asking if the wife of the person that died
mm,
has gone back to work. I said, oh yeah, she's gone back to work and whatever. He died in December. And so I was asking, I said, what are the traditional things or cultural things that you do when your husband passes? In some tribes you have to wear white, or you have to wear black, or you have to shave your hair.
yeah.
My mom was like, oh, there's none of that. She's like, there's none of that. And I said, there's none of that because there was never anything, or because of Christianity. And she's like, because we're Christians, we don't practice any of those things. So to find out
That's so
what they do
interesting.
when your spouse passes, I would actually have to go back home and have conversations with like my grandfather, because he would be like one of the only people that I know that's still alive, or people like Major General Lequot that are still
Mm-hmm.
alive, that would know what it entails to, if your partner passes. But in recent times, like I just said, her husband passed. She buried her husband a
Mm,
few weeks after she went back to work. She didn't cut her hair. She didn't have to wear white every
mm,
day. Her family didn't have to wear white. In fact, I went to
mm,
their home. I went to visit them at home, and their house looked like normal. It didn't look like somewhere that
mm,
somebody had just passed.
mm.
How
So
in other Nigerian homes there'll
fascinating.
be like a big picture of the person, and in none of that, all of that was gone.
It almost feels like it's been stripped down to kind of a bare kind of expression, which is very interesting because, Nigeria is big, so it's hard to make such a blanket statement like this. But in general, quite expressive people, regardless of ethnic group. And I find that it almost feels like it's kind of toned down. But I don't know if it's toned down in I can't appreciate the simplicity of it because, I'm used to everything being so
Yeah, over the
physically
top.
and emotionally expressive, not even necessarily over the top. I mean, there's some things that are, I don't know where it is. I have where it is in my mind, but I don't want to say where it is just in case it's not correct. Where if a woman loses a husband, she to prove that she didn't kill him, she has to drink the bath water. Like they
I
bathe
know what you're
the
talking about, and
corpse.
I have a
You know what I'm
place
talking
in
about?
mind, but I'm not
Yeah.
going to say it either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, they bathe the corpse, and you have to drink the water. And if you don't die, then that's proof that you didn't kill your husband. And I just thought, so if the wife dies, does the husband do the same to prove that he didn't kill his wife? Considering that the second leading cause of death for women is at the hands of their partners. So, and this is just around the world.
Yeah, I
So,
don't.
you know,
Plus, there's no way
topic for
you
another
bathe
day.
a corpse. There's no way you bathe a corpse. Like there's bacteria and germs in that in the water. If you're introducing that into somebody's system and the person has a weak immune system, it could potentially take them out.
They'll be like, then she killed her husband.
So that thing is neither here nor there. But I appreciate the simplicity, but at the same time, I crave for more. So
Mm,
I think growing up when I was younger, like I would always be like, when people were talking about, or it was like October 1st, like, oh, in school, come in your traditional, whatever, whatever, whatever.
mm,
For the longest time, I didn't even know that my tribe, so as we a lot of minority tribes in Nigeria, so if you look at the Tiv people, their fabric is black and white, and then
mm.
Idoma people is black and red. Same extends to Southern Kaduna. Each tribe has their own
Oh.
fabric. I believe ours is green, white, and yellow. I believe. Don't quote me on that. Can't remember. But it's like a striped whatever, whatever. For the longest time, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that existed. So when I would have to show up in my traditional outfit in school for
Mm-hmm.
events like Democracy Day or Independence Day, my mom would just sew wrapper and blouse or skirt and blouse with Hollandis. Yeah, with Hollandis. And that's what I went to school. Like, the way you see women dressing on Sunday to church in wrapper and skirts with Hollandis was what I would get sewn. And that's why I went to school. And when people asked me if that was my traditional outfit, for the longest time I used to say yes. And not wrongfully so, because that's what most people in Southern Kaduna wear now. Nobody really wears, like, if they say come out in your, if we're doing like quote unquote an Owambe or whatever, and they ask us to come out, nobody's going to really go and wear that's our material with those colors. What
I
they
feel
will
like it might
typically
just be
show
giving
up
too
in,
much.
yeah. So what they will show up in is wrapper, skirt and blouse, or wrapper and blouse with a fabric, right? So even when you're doing like ashwebi for weddings now, for example, Yoruba people is Iran Boba with Ipele, you have everything down to a T. Are we going to go and tell everybody every time there's a traditional wedding to wear that's our fabric? Do you get?
But they're traditional Yoruba fabrics. I don't know what they're called actually, but that particular type of fabric is only worn for really, really special occasions.
But then again, oh my God, I end up saying them again. But then those fabrics, what makes them unique? What makes them unique is the weaving of the fabric. For example, like Ashoke or Dire, it's the technique that makes them unique. Our fabric or our traditional clothing now, what makes it unique is the color. So I don't see us repeating that over and over and over and over and over and over again. So what we end up doing is either going they call it Atampa or Hollandis route. You would pick a fabric like, and tell people to wear, or we end up going the lace route and just say, oh, this is the lace that we're using for the wedding. That's the lace, go and sew what you want to sew. So we don't have like, you see how Igbo people have George, for example, they're getting married. They're different colors of George, different whatever, so they can pick anything. We don't have that. There's none of that. So I mean, it makes your life simple and easy, but I crave some depth, if that makes sense.
This is so interesting to me because it's like it makes me now very curious, because the purpose of this is a crazy thing when you podcast and you interview people. The purpose was just to get to know Southern Kaduna people and the culture more, have a casual, fun conversation about it. But now I'm so curious as to what was their culture pre-colonization, pre-missionaries coming, because something has happened where, or maybe it's just even our inability to accept. We might do the research and find that pre-Christianity, they were simple people as well. Like they were not doing too much. They were simple people. But if you, from the Nigerian perspective of, or maybe even just my Lagosian Yoruba perspective of, this cannot be, there needs to be more to this. Yeah.
In Southern Kaduna, for the longest time, I was like, this is impossible. This country is full of rich culture. Where is the culture when it comes to these people? And I think that's one of the things that has fueled my need or my craving to actually do the research work that I'm going to do, because I'm like, there has to be something that we were. I'm not going to take this Christianity washed version of us as what used to be. Who were we before the Christians came, and what did we do? Like there has to be something, but I don't know. It's just there's been a huge lack of documentation. I'll be very honest with you, because even in my preliminary research and looking for things, there are blurbs of our lives that I can't find. I cannot access information about those periods or whatever. So I'm going to have to rely on word of mouth and history that's been passed down from generation to generation. And I don't speak the language. That's going to be very challenging, but we'll see how that goes.
I think you can do it. It's interesting. I mean, I know I keep going on about it, but I just think it's interesting because the Southern Kaduna one is particularly interesting because, I mean, Igbo people, I think I'm speaking in general blanket terms here. Generally, in terms of Christianity, took to Catholicism a lot more than I would say than than the other than Yoruba people, for example. I don't know if Yoruba people really took to celestial church, which to me makes sense that they took more to that, considering there are a lot of things with celestial that kind of remind me of like a traditional religion in the expression of
Yoruba
that.
culture.
Yeah, like if that kind of worship, and it doesn't surprise me that they would take more to that. But this Southern Kaduna one has spun me. It has spun me. So let's talk very quickly about your documentary and research project that you want to do for Kaduna. We've kind of hinted at it at different points in the episode. So do you want to shed some light so that we can support you on Patreon?
I do not have a Patreon running, but
yes.
I ideally want to dedicate some time in my at this rate in my 30s. I want to dedicate some time to actually curating and documenting, maybe not the entire Southern Kaduna because there are a lot of tribes, but particularly Atiap and Kataf culture, customs, and history. I think that it is important that we tell our own stories and not wait for people to tell our stories for us. And I think that it's, as urbanization continues to happen, I was born in Lagos, I wasn't born in Kaduna, and spent most of my formative years living in Lagos and Abuja in Nigeria. And now I live in Canada, and I most likely would have my kids in Canada, and then the next generation, would be born here and be detached. So I think that it's important that there's some form of proper documentation and history that people can use to educate the next generation, even if we don't educate other people. But for those of us that are from that line, it's important that we have some sort of history and education that we can use to teach ourselves about ourselves and remind our children, especially those in diaspora and those that are growing up in urban places in Nigeria and across the world, that there's a place that you come from and this is what they do. This is who they are. I would love to sit down with people that are like older people, and I'm sort of blessed to be able to know some of them on personal basis. Like I mentioned, my grandfather is still alive, thank God for that. People like Major General Lockwood that fought for the rights of Kataf people back in the day, which is a whole different story. It's still alive and with us. I would love to interview him. We do have a king. I would love to interview the king and just speak to people that have really held the culture to their chests in that sense and hear what they have to say. So that's really what the research is. I would at the end of it hope to have some sort of visual thing that we could share with the world, maybe premiere somewhere. I have this really amazing friend that I shared this story with, and he was like, oh, why are you thinking small? Think Sundance, think think all these big things.
It's so crazy that you said things Sundance, because when you said, I wanted to premiere over the world, I was thinking Cannes Film Festival is not a bad place.
Yes, and I never thought about it. My friend was like, and the person, Abango, he was like, think all these big things, think all these things. And I'm like, damn, at this rate, I'm going to have to hire you as our creative director because, you're thinking better than I am. But yeah, that's basically what I want to dedicate a part of my 30s towards. I just need to save the money and, I need to move back home.
I'm fully invested.
To be able to do it.
I'm fully invested in this.
I don't know. Yeah, but we're going to get there. If you want to support minority tribes, you want to support, like this is just like in the immediate. My grandfather happens to be the chairman of something called the Atiap or Tiap Language Development Board, and they are actually working on a Tiap history project. The project is basically, they want to develop and produce like oral Tiap language stuff, like things that people can use to learn the language. And they need money. They need money. I think he said they needed I believe it's like 5 million naira or something like that. I'm just trying to read the thing. Yeah, they need like between 5 to 10 million naira to do the entire thing. And they are soliciting for funds because they want to complete this in the year 2023. So I would give Tayo the
Yes, please.
bank account, the account name, account number. It's UBA, and you can, I don't know, add it
Yeah.
to the blurb or whatever. But I'll share that with you. And
Blurb.
if you really feel led to help minority tribes, document their history and tell their stories, yeah, donate to that in the interim while I figure out my
Yes.
life and how I'm going to move back and do this research. I
Once
think
we
I
are
just
trying
need
to
to
move
bite the
back, my
bullet, but
dear.
I need some.
I want to add that it's an important cause to support because it's us telling our own history by ourselves from the actual people that belong to that ethnic group, and they're the ones doing it. There's no outside influence. It's being custodians of the culture, their own culture, telling their story from their own perspective and their own narrative without, a Western influence of those sorts of things. So it's a very, very good cause to support. So, I mean, we've kind of spoken about Southern Kaduna culture and history and the missing gaps. Speaking of very, I guess, quickly as we come to the end of our episode about Southern Kaduna and what's going on right now. If you can speak briefly about the genocide, and then we can talk about obviously the security situation and maybe just shed some light so that people know what's happening.
Okay. I used the word genocide very loosely earlier on because I personally think it's some sort of a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, not just in recent years, but for a really long time, but it's heightened up in recent years. There's been these clashes between the Southern Kaduna communities and the, let me not say Hausa people, Fulani people, nomads that are not from that area. And the age-long story that I know to be true has always been that these people were passing through the area, and Southern Kaduna people, whichever community they happen to stop at, would give them a piece of land and say, oh, you can rest here, do what you need to do here, just being very, homely, cautious, and just, it will get to a couple of years, these people would remain there. And when the owners of the land come back and be like, okay, we want to use our land, these people would then begin to claim that the land belongs to them. And so there's been clashes back and forth about the land, who owns the land, who doesn't own the land, who are the actual owners of the place. Now the nomads, Fulani or Hausa people are claiming, oh, they are from Southern Kaduna too, and this is their land, blah, blah. But the issue is you can only trace the land back to God knows how many years or whatever, whereas the Southern Kaduna people can trace themselves back to the Nok era, of being here. So that has been that, and that has snowballed into just attacks upon attacks upon attacks upon attacks. There have been attacks from these communities going into Southern Kaduna communities and killing people, butchering people. Let me put it that way. They are going in there, killing young men, young women, children, pregnant women, and deliberately leaving older people. So they're killing off the younger ones and actually leaving older people behind, which to some extent is going to cause some sort of extinction of people. If you're killing all the young people and leaving only old people behind, there's nobody to continue the legacy or continue.
People.
Exactly. You're living in a community of vulnerable people, which puts us at a disadvantaged place when it comes to just defending ourselves and stuff like that. So there's all of that. And then there's also banditry in that, as we know in northern Nigeria in general, but also Southern Kaduna does have banditry, there's kidnapping, and there's just a lot of political unrest and security issues and clashes between communities that have been going on for way too long. Government interference hasn't helped.
The minimal
in some cases,
interference. I
only
was
made it
going to
worse.
say non-existent to minimal interference.
So interference, in some cases, it's only made it worse. So I'm hoping that in this election, when they go to vote on the 11th of March, they'll be able to vote right and vote correct for people that can actually stand with them and for them and protect them, because they also deserve protection from whatever is going on. But yeah, that's just a brief, into what's going on in terms of security and kidnapping and all of that in Southern Kaduna.
What do you think could be a potential solution to this? I mean, and that's a very broad question, so please forgive me for asking it, because with situations like this, they're very complicated. There isn't one answer to fix it. But what could the federal government be doing better?
Honestly, I don't know.
That's a fair enough
Because,
answer.
yeah, there's a lot of things that you need to actually like go deep into to evaluate what can be a way forward. And I'm not privy to that information. So I don't know. It will be easy for me to sit down here and be like, oh, send security, do this, do that, do that. But how realistic is that? I don't want to give a solution that's not realistic or a solution that's not founded on actual facts and stuff like that. My dad would know because he works in that field, but I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It's such a shame because there's this delusion sometimes when you are people that are not living in some parts of Nigeria to be like, Nigeria is fine, Nigeria is this, and Nigeria is fine for the most part, but there are regions that need help when it comes to security. Real serious help when it comes to security. I mean, the whole country needs help when it comes to security, but there are regions such as Southern Kaduna and northern regions that need that extra support. And I think that Nigerians need to also take it seriously without the thought that, oh, that's happening over there. And that's just what happens over there. I think there needs to be some kind of involvement as well and accountability that is not just coming from people in Southern Kaduna, but coming from Southwest, Eastern regions and etc.
Yeah. The nation at large. Yeah.
It needs to be our collective problem. Yeah. Thank you for being here, Vanessa.
Yep.
I'm sure that there are so many people.
Thank
Nigerian,
you. I feel so sober all of a sudden.
You feel sober?
Yes, I feel so sober all of a sudden. I don't know.
Why did we end on a sad note?
No. It just feels very. I don't know. I think this is the first time that I speak about Southern Kaduna a lot, but I think this is the first time like I'm officially speaking about it. And I think this is also the first time that I'm publicly saying that I want to do my documentary, do like the research. So it's a sobering moment. It's just very,
Makes it real.
Makes it real, yeah.
Well, now you know what I've been going through with layers. It makes it real. It makes it real. It makes it daunting. It makes it scary, but it's achievable.
Yeah, it definitely is. Just gotta find the right time. I mean, not even the right time. You just gotta find the time. Gotta find the time. Let me not say right time because there will never be a right time.
The time will come to you,
I guess,
and you will feel ready in that time. Like it's like I had an episode with Tina, and we spoke about like procrastination and moments of feeling ready. And honestly, the time will come to you. Everything that people say, like the most cliche things, is so true. When you feel like it's time to go, you feel like it's time to go. And in the meantime, micro steps. There are a lot of things, for example, the platform we're using to record this episode for Layers. I found this platform at some point last year, and they're just micro steps, things that you just keep in your bookmark and in your folder, and then you just keep the steps. So it's not like, oh, I have this research project to do and I've said that I'm going to do it, now I have to do it. It's like it's kind of like when people are pregnant and they're like, well, it's time to push. When the time comes to push, you will know. And I'm excited. I think you should, you said I don't have a Patreon. I was like, yet. Even if I have to set it up for you, I'll set it up myself.
Yeah.
Even if I have to set it up for you, I will set it up myself. And I will link everything concerning the language board for ATIAP.
Yeah.
I know it.
Yeah, I'll send you everything you need to do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight. I appreciate every bit of our conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
You're welcome.